The early Christians found the crucifixion to be so shocking that they didn't make an image of it for 200 years. But in the centuries since, how the church portrays the cross has changed many times. In today's video, we look at what has happened. The early Christians were acutely aware of the controversial nature of their belief that God's Son, the Christ, had died by crucifixion. Now you must remember that crucifixion was designed to shame and to humiliate. In 1 Corinthians chapters 1 verse 23 to 24, Paul reiterated how contentious this belief was. It's written, "We proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God." Centuries later, and our familiarity with this event, combined with the Protestant tendency to portray an empty cross rather than a crucifix, can sometimes blunt the jagged edge of this belief. But taking a look at how the crucifixion has been depicted over the past 2000 years will help remind us of its raw and controversial power. The earliest surviving picture of the crucifixion, dated from the year 200, from the Palatine Hill, Rome, was not made by Christians and was clearly designed to offend. A figure raises a hand in worship to a donkey-headed person naked on a cross. Below the crude sketch and scratched in Greek is written, "Alexamenos worships his God." We do not know who scratched it into the wall or who Alexamenos was, but we do know that the crucifixion of Jesus was shocking. And while Christians were quick to write about it, for about 200 years, they were slow to depict it. The image was so raw. When the Roman Empire began to convert to Christianity, from the 4th century onwards, depiction of the crucifixion became more common. And once crucifixion was banned as a form of capital punishment, it became more acceptable to depict it. These early images often lacked the violence of the real event, showing Jesus reigning from the cross. This was the official, serene image of the crucified Jesus that will inform people's imagination until well into the Middle Ages. In the most elaborate examples, jeweled crosses, the crux gemata, proclaimed the majesty of Christ's sacrifice. But there was little suffering shown in these magnificent objects of devotion. As Christianity expanded beyond its Mediterranean heartland, other cultures began to depict the crucifixion in ways which resonated with their own ethnicity. In the Viking North, the crucified Christ wears trousers like any Norseman. At Jelling, in Denmark, an image of a bound Jesus was carved in a randstone using Norse artistic traditions. One thing that stands out is that this Jesus is not nailed on a cross but only bound to it. In sub-Saharan Africa, a clearly African Christ is nailed to the cross. Across Asia and the Americas, people depict the crucified Jesus in their own image. Later, from the 13th century onwards, changes began to take place within the European artistic tradition, and there was a rediscovery of the suffering of Christ. Images of Jesus reigning serenely from the cross gave way to ones portraying the pain and brokenness. As the Black Death swept across Europe in the 14th century, this accelerated. In some pictures, Jesus was even made to appear as a plague victim, as if to emphasize the connection between the 1st century crucifixion and people's experiences of pain and suffering during the pandemic. During the Reformation, many Protestants abandoned the crucifix image and replaced it with the empty cross. A reaction against the medieval veneration of crucifixes, it also meant that for many Protestants, the visual portrayal of Christ's suffering was no longer a central part of their Christian experience. Today, modern portrayals of the crucifixion, often in film, have chosen to make clear the bloody and shocking nature of Christ's death. For example, you might remember the gruesome depiction of the crucifixion in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. Nevertheless, for most Protestants, the empty cross remains the dominant image within churches. At the same time, there has been a necessary correction of the overdominance of images of white Jesus that proliferated with colonization. Modern artistic works are now more widely representing those that created them and seem more willing to explore the shocking violence of crucifixion. These modern depictions once again remind us that Jesus identifies with the whole of humanity, and that in the violence and humiliation of the cross, the depth of God's love and the cost of salvation is beautifully and wonderfully revealed.